People have so many conceptions and misconceptions about how composers create music. There's the idea of inspiration, I think, which goes back quite a ways, about this light from heaven coming down and, oh, there's an idea. There was a pope, actually, who didn't help this. I think it probably started with him, where he was trying to unify the music that the Catholic Church was singing. I want to say this is 7th century. And so he told everybody that the Holy Spirit came down from heaven in the form of a dove and sang all the music in his ear, and he wrote it down. And that's, I want to say, where a lot of the idea of inspiration comes from. Because people took him at his word, of course, so. Unfortunately, I've never had that happen. I've never had a dove sing a piece in my ear, although it might be nice. There are stories of Prokofiev walking in the woods to get his ideas. Olivier Messiaen, the French composer, 20th century, would walk around listening for birds. He would transcribe the bird song and then incorporate that into his pieces. There's Beethoven storming around Vienna, sort of madly trying to get ideas. That, I'm sure, happens. None of it has ever really happened for me. Composers back then, too, like Mozart, worked in almost more of a mathematical style of music, this highly structured music. And while much of today's music, classical music, or my music anyway, still has a similar structure, it works in very much a different dialect, where it's much harder, at least for me, to go and hear this fully finished piece in my head. There are stories, I don't know if it's apocryphal, if he claimed this or not, but Georges Bizet, the French composer famously of Carmen, claimed of his symphony that he composed the whole thing in his head before he wrote it down. Take that with a grain of salt, because it's a long piece in multiple movements. While ideas are there, and I can certainly think of what a piece should do gesturally, the direction it should take, the sort of kinetic form of it. The specifics I have to figure out at a piano. So I'll often think about music in terms of direction, in terms of drama, before I start. What does it look like if it were on stage, if it were a dancer? What sort of motions would it take on? What colors? What gestures? And then I try to figure out what do those sound like in music. And hopefully, the goal is always, that these end up as this very kinetic, very direction-driven music that always is kind of going somewhere, that has a natural built-in momentum. Something I think we forget a lot in music is that silence and boredom aren't bad things. They can be incredibly helpful for creative people. We're just inundated with sound. John Cage wrote a lot about silence. There's a story of him kind of getting to New York mid-century and just being so surprised and so kind of disheartened at how noisy everything was. Do you know anything about Cage? Cage was so big on silence. Cage wrote 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which is a silence piece. I heard a performance of it in Rothko Chapel once in Houston, which is this beautiful space with 8 just black Rothkos all around, and that's basically all. And even an audience used to contemporary music got uncomfortable, and that just shows you how averse we are to silence. So I think silence is so incredibly important as a human being, let alone an artist or composer, because silence is where our imagination can actually take hold and start to play, right? And have fun and create ideas. There are stories of Einstein just walking around in the woods or watching the water, That's something we just don't do. We never just sit and let silence happen. We always have just something going in the background. The danger of that too is that music becomes just a filler to isolate us from silence. It just becomes noise. Good music can go so much deeper. It's something with which we can engage on a personal level and kind of wrestle with. I think something we forget to do sometimes is to let ourselves get bored. It was a few years ago I realized that during that time when we're doing other things or when we're just sitting there, The piece is taking shape in our subconscious. We're figuring out a direction. Bach would do this thing sometimes where he'd get to an impasse in a piece where he wouldn't know what direction it should go in. And so what he would do is he'd just stop, sit back, sometimes just go to bed, and when he would wake up, there would be the answer. His unconscious mind would work on it all night. And so I think that's something that we forget to do. It's something that helps me a lot, just like sitting, trying to clear my mind, just see what happens. And that's something that I think is really beautiful about residencies like Serenbeed. That you can just sit and turn off all distractions or go for a walk in the woods and just be for a minute, for an hour, for a week, and let stuff just kind of happen. You never know, something beautiful might take shape.